All right, everybody, welcome back. So this is going to be the official contest entry video for the Jack Jack Scratch Building Contest. It is Wednesday, April 5th, and we're going to start building this. So in this build, I'm going to be using a photo printed on paper. I'm using cardboard, 1/16 inch mat board. I'm using wood over here, and then I will also use some, I don't know if I have it in front of me, but I don't, but I'm going to be using some brass tubing for the roof, for some roof detail. So let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the pictures, glue them onto the actual cardboard, and then I'm gonna make it 3D. All right, we'll be right back. So for the back wall, I needed a large piece of mat board. So I'm using an old desk blotter. The old desk blotter has 1/16 inch thickness to it, and it is mat board, and it'll work just fine. So we're gonna cut this for the back wall. We'll be right back. All right, so what I did before I started handling these pictures, I sprayed it with a acrylic matte finish. All right, because I printed these on inkjet, I didn't want to lose any of the ink in case I do any type of weathering, maybe with a wash or anything like that. So I sealed them up, so now I can handle them, and that's not going to be any issues. And what I did is I cut it to size, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it now to this piece. So I'm going to spray the back of this with a Elmer's spray glue, and then we're going to glue this on. So this is going to be one of the walls. We'll be right back. All right, so now what I'm doing is I cut out the opening for the actual DuPont section of the facility where the rail cars are actually going to be coming in for switching. And then I put this clamp on it just to hold it, and I'm going to be working on this back wall now. So I'm getting ready to cut out this for the back wall, and then I got to cut out another piece for the back wall because it's going to be a little bit longer than the rest of the walls. So we'll be right back. So if you're using this Elmer's glue, you want to make sure you put enough on, and also you want to make sure that it's perfectly straight on the actual piece of cardboard that you're using, or mat board. And you want to make sure that you press it on evenly across the whole piece. And it doesn't take long to set up. All right, so now what I had to do is cut another piece from another one of these walls and extend this way. All right, we'll be back. All right, so far it's coming out pretty good, and the next step is to actually cut the back walls out and actually brace them. I'm going to brace these pieces and then start the assembly process. But actually, before I do the assembly, I got to cut these doors out and then make them look 3D. Actually, they're going to be actually inside the building, so it's going to look like they're recessed in. So I'm going to do 3 of those doors. I'm going to leave the pedestrian doors alone, and then we're going to move on to the next step. So we'll be back. Okay, so here's the side wall, and you can see the opening that I cut for the trains to pass through. And I did standard bracing, and I do have a video on how to do this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But what I wanted to point out is this bracing here that goes across. I reset the bracing down, so when I put my roof card on, it sits just about a foot below the edge of the roof, and that's more like an industrial type of roofing that I like to do when I do factories. So but all the pieces will be braced like this with the this top piece to recess down. So I'm going to continue bracing these, and then the next video clip you'll see me actually assembling all the parts. We'll be right back. All right, so what I'm doing now is I'm going to be making this look like the door is set into the building. And what I did is I cut the door out, And then what I did is I cleaned up the edges with a little, like a nail file, little emery board. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to brace this piece now. But when I brace it, I'm gonna brace it here, here, and here, and then I'm gonna brace this piece. So when we return, I will show you what it's gonna look like. We'll be right back. All right, so my workbench is an absolute disaster, but what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you what I've been working on as far as the bracing goes. So the reason why, I'll use it on this one. So this is gonna be the front of the building. And if you notice, I had to cut out, this is the area where the freight cars will go in, and this is just a door, garage door. And what I did is I cut it out, and then I braced around it. Just like that. So here's the door, and this is the bracing I put on the back of the door. That fits in there like that. Let's see if I can do this. I'm trying to do this one-handed. And now you have a door that's set back. And I think that looks pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is, if you notice, you got that wood showing there. See if I can put it into focus. You have that wood showing there, the bracing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some cardstock and weather it, and then that will be the brick face that I'm going to use. So I'm going to use the cardstock as just to model a brick or a cement opening. All right. But before we do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start gluing this section, all these sections together. Now, if you notice, and I already did a bracing video before, so I'm not going to redo everything, but I put X's here, meaning I don't want to put a piece of wood there, because the piece that's going to go against it, so this is piece 1, and I labeled all the pieces. This is going to fit in like this. And the reason why you have to be careful with where you put your strip wood is because if you do it wrong, you're gonna have to cut it off, and you usually end up ruining the piece. Now, when you're building a kit, it has all the directions and it shows you where the bracing is going. In this case, I'm using a total scratch build, and you basically have to figure out where you're gonna put the bracing from the start. So now I can glue those two corners together, and nothing will be interfering with one another, both on the vertical and also on the roof bracing there. So I'm gonna start gluing these pieces together, and then we'll go on to the next step. All right, something to consider when you're gluing these pieces together. When you're making a building like this, an industrial building, you wanna make sure that it's nice and square. So I'm gonna use this square here, and then a regular square on the back, so it's perfectly straight. I glued those pieces together. Now I'm going to move on to the next one. So far so good. We'll be back. All right, so I'm gluing all the walls together, and I found a slight problem. I'm going to have to make some modifications to a wall and then actually cut a whole new wall for one of the ends. I measured it, and this is what happens when you're doing scratch builds. So we'll be back, but I'm going to let this glue set up, and I'll be back down, and I'll get all my final measurements and make the new walls. We'll be back. All right, so what I did is I added a small section, about a 1/2 inch section of wall to the back, and then I reinforced it, obviously, with some bracing. And I got some clamps holding it right now. And I also cut the end wall here. So after I cut the end wall, I noticed that the way the picture was laid out, I got a 1/2 a window. So what I did is I took another copy of the same picture. I cut some bricks. And then what you do is, what I'm gonna do is lay this on here and glue it on. And now we got a perfect wall. All right. So let me go get this glued on, and then I'm going to cut the tunnel portal. We'll be right back. All right, so what I'm using now is I'm using my strip wood, and this is going to be for the 3D effects on the outer of the building. So I have various pieces of strip wood. I have mat board that's been cut, and I also have 16th inch square strip wood. So I'm going to paint all this like a aged concrete. And then here is my roofing paper, and this is just cardstock paper. And I'm just going to spray paint it different colors, and then I'm going to cut it up as rolled tar paper. So I'm going to go paint this, and then we'll be right back. All right, so what I did is I ended up changing the design of the building just slightly, and I made it shorter. I just wasn't happy the way it was looking, so I cut it out, and I rebuilt that corner. So now I have the whole building glued together. Now I measured all the pieces, or all the dimensions rather, for the roof card, and I'm going to be using that piece of what's left of a desk blotter, the cardboard behind that. So I'm going to be using that to cut out the piece I need, and I wrote down my measurements here. So let me get this roof card cut out, and then we'll be right back. All right, I just want to show you what was left of the desk blotter. I still got quite a bit left, and to see the size of the roof card that I cut out, that's not a small roof. So I'm pretty pleased with that. But the great thing about it is I have extra for other projects. So it just goes to show you, using everyday stuff around the house like an old blotter can definitely help you model a building. So we'll be right back. All right, so I was able to get the roof card cut and fit the size. The building is now perfectly square, and the next step is I'm going to be putting the transfer tape on the roof. I'm going to take my roofing paper and cut out the tar paper roof, and then I'll start applying it. And then after that, I'm going to add the vertical detail coming up, horizontal detail here. I'm going to edge the doors, put this door in, and then put these doors in as well. So now I'm going to start with the actual 3D effect of this building. So we'll be back. Actually, we'll be back tomorrow because it is getting late. I'm going to be done modeling for the night. So we'll see you at the next segment. All right, so we're going to move on to the next step, which is going to be put on our transfer tape for the installation of the tar paper roof. But one of the options that I'm going to take advantage of, if you look at this cardboard, it's a little warped, which is not a big deal. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to brace underneath this roof card before I put it on the building itself. So I'll show you what I'm going to be doing with that once I get done with the roof. But let's get this video started, and I'm going to start putting on the transfer tape, and then we're going to go right into the installation of the tar paper. We'll be right back. All right, before we get to cutting the actual tar paper, I just want to show you the materials I used to create it. So I'm using these cardstock sheets I got from Staples. I use like a white or a gray and a black. And then what I do is I alternate the colors here. This is going to be for the main roof. So I use a deep gray matte, and I also use a gray ultra flat. So I just do random sprays on the cards. Now, I'm going to be using some of this material on the roof as well, but this is primarily for the openings for the doors. So I wanted to create a realistic aged concrete. So I'm using this scale coat paint to do it. And as you can see there, it says aged concrete. So I started with these two on the white, and then I finished it with this. So that's what you have left. And then for the roofing cards, for the tar paper, it's a little different. All right, but I noticed that my spray can spit a little bit on here, but that's okay. Not a big deal. So let's get started. We're going to cut these pieces out, and then it'll make more sense once you see the final product. We'll be right back. All right, so all the tar paper roofing is cut, ready to go. And as you can tell, I got the gray pieces mixed in as well. And I'm just gonna pull them randomly and just start sticking them on the roof card. So let's get started. All right, so we got the roof card all set, and there it is right here. Ready to be installed in the model. Before we do that, let me just timestamp this one. Today's date. All right. All right, ready to go. So tomorrow's video, what we're gonna focus in on is the trim. All right, we'll be back. All right, so now that I have the roof installed, I still have to glue it in. But if you take a look at it, I mean, it'll be fine just the way it is, but I like to weather it. And you wanna make sure that the roof card or the roofing material that you put on there matches the building that you're modeling. So if you have a really rough building, you know, you could say that the roof was recently replaced, but you kind of want everything to match. So I'm gonna lightly weather this roof, and first step in weathering it is I'm gonna take a piece of 220 grit sandpaper. I'm gonna lightly go over it, and then you're gonna see how it changes the appearance. Then I'm gonna glue it in, and I'm gonna add one more weathering level to it. So we'll be right back. All right, so you could, as you can see, it just added just a little bit more of a weathering to the roof. Very subtle, but I'm gonna do one more step after this once it's glued in. So right now I'm gonna put the bracing on the back of this roof card and then glue it in place. We'll be right back. So here's the bracing that I put on the back of the roof card. You don't have to go crazy with it. Just add a little bit more strength to the actual roof because it is so big. You want to make sure that the roof is pretty much have some strength to it when you're drilling into it and putting in detailed parts such as roof vents and things like that. So now we're going to glue it onto the actual structure. All right, everybody, so I started putting on the upper trim, and I'm using 2 pieces of different types of strip wood to do that. And before I actually glued them on, I cut them to size, and then I did a slight weather with some, it's like a steel wool Brillo pad. And after that, I gave it a wash of my mixture of light India ink. And here's the vertical pieces that will go up as well. And those pieces are gonna go here. So I'm gonna get the rest of this top piece in, and then I'm gonna start gluing up the verticals, and then I'm gonna put these on. So we'll be back. So now I'm using a Prismacolor marker, and what's nice about these, one end is larger than the others, so depending on what you're using it for shading and also coloring roofs and things like that, what I decided to do here was use it on the simulated cement pieces. And what I'm doing is I'm just covering up the raw cardstock paper. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the side trim pieces for the building and I'm doing a little bit of distressing on them. And I'm using just a steel wool pad because I don't want it heavy, I just want it subtle. And what's nice about this steel wool pad is you can actually wrap it around the actual piece and work the piece through it and get the entire piece in one shot. I usually hit it around 3 times before it's distressed enough. What I would be careful of is when you're working with the 1/16 square, you could easily break it. So it's better just to wrap the actual piece, steel wool, around the actual part that you're distressing. So before I glue on the side trim, I'm going to give it a quick wash with a medium alcohol India ink. And my formula for medium is 1 pint of 91% rubbing alcohol to 2 teaspoons of India ink. So another pieces that I want to distress is the actual simulated cement ends inside the doors. And I started using the actual steel wool pieces, but soon realized that I wanted a little bit more of a distressed area or distressed look. So I went to the 220 grit sandpaper, and I like the result very much. So now it's time to glue the doors in, and I ended up repeating this step 3 times, and they're looking pretty good. And I'm using the actual weld bond glue through most of this project. All right, everybody, so this build is pretty much wrapped up for part 1. Now, as you can tell, I have had the doors are all recessed. The trim is on the doors alongside the building, all the verticals. And as you can come over here, it's all set. And as well as this side too. So in part 2, what I'm going to focus on is I'm going to add more detail coming off the face of the building. So I'm going to have these windowsills become 3D. I'm actually going to put fire escapes on, and then I'm going to add on to the top. So I'm going to put a window clear story up here, and then another type of structure on top, just to fill up the roof. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put the sign on this building, and also we're going to put some billboards on the roof. So that will be for part 2, and there will be a part 3. So I'll let you know what that's going to be once I finish part 2. So I hope you enjoyed this build series on making cardboard structures or cardstock structures. This was definitely a first for me, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So again, this building will serve as an industry here. It's going to serve as a background structure, and it's also going to serve as a tunnel. All right. So I'm pretty happy with the results so far. It's definitely going to be a fun little project once it's done. And we'll see at the next installment of this build series. Now, at the beginning of this build series, I said that this was a contest build, which actually was a contest build, but unfortunately the contest was canceled. So I'm going to continue on with this build, and we're going to see what I can do with it. So thanks for watching. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. So I'll see you at the next installment. Thanks for watching.